I've been living and working in China since 2010, so 12 years now. And in that time, I've developed, sourced, manufactured over 2,500 different products, visited more than 500 factories, and attended more than 20 Rio Canton fairs. That led me to manufacture for different brands, retailers, and licenses like the NBA, Olympics, United Nations, Ministry of Defense, plus a lot of big box retailers in UK, Europe, and US, plus Amazon private label sellers and Shopify sellers as well. And I think the cool thing about that is that, like, being able to supply a wide variety of different people, it kind of teaches you in terms of like, well, if you could get the best product at the best price from the best supplier, then you can essentially supply anyone you want. So those principles are what I try to teach. And I've got a YouTube channel as well, similar to Sharon and Adam as well, just called Sourcing with Kian. So if you're interested in videos like that, check it out.
And Sharon obviously needs no introduction, but we should start with you, Sharon. Let's start with some of the ideas, because I asked the guys to go away and have a think. I've made some notes and stuff I want to discuss so we can bring that to the table as well. First thoughts, Sharon, what's some of the ideas you've been scribbling down the last couple of days?
I only scribbled down 2 minutes ago. So
okay,
it was 2 minutes
super
ago.
Professional. So, there we go.
Yeah. Look. Well, it's because it's all in my head is the truth. Look,
you're a pro.
Yeah, I live and breathe Amazon from the minute I wake up until the minute I go to sleep. And I know that I say this sometimes and people think it comes from a place of, I don't know, the wrong place. But because I don't only sell myself and I also do work with people one-on-one, it means I don't live in my own little bubble. So I don't live in the bubble of only anti-aging products. I don't live in my bubble of only postpartum products. I've been able to see many on a one-on-one level, which is different when you're in there seeing, the search term reports and you're seeing the products and you're seeing the conversions, etc. And I was thinking about the subject before. In the last 2 months, I've been a part of launches in the camping niche, in the exercise niche. I've launched my own products in the beauty niche, which are extension to my brand. So it's not like a big deal. I've launched a gift product, okay, and it's been an interesting time. Now, on the podcast just before Prime Day, I made a podcast about Prime Day, and I said it will be interesting to see how this November goes. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say as well, because I said I think that this Prime Day will impact November because Prime Day, or Prime Early Access, whatever they called it, end of October, early October, mid-October, I can't remember now. And then Black Friday, Cyber Monday, end of November. And for example, we launched a gift product in the middle of October. And I've launched gift products before, and it was an interesting launch to see, different from any other year. It's a premium product. Let's just say all the competitors within that specific niche are between $39 to $40. And this is supposed to be a $60 product launched at $50, $49.95 for the sake of, for the sake of testing to see, if we can, not for the sake of testing, for the sake of launch. I've seen that my beauty brands have never been impacted, not by COVID, not by recession, nothing that's anti-aging products. And I can't remember now if you said it on air or off air, but
I said it off air. We'll go into that later because it's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll keep that a little bit for later because it's a category that you would think would be one of the things that you strike off, right? Because it's not a necessity, but we'll get into that in a bit. Yeah.
Cool. So the beauty brand's never been impacted. I don't think that people necessarily need to be looking at it now as, and this is my opinion, as recession proofing their products. I think in general, people just need to be looking at it as nothing's the same as when most of us started. Adam started, I think in the last 2 or 3 years with your own brand. I know you've been within Amazon for a lot longer than that. I started in 2016. Danny, I think, started 2015. It's a totally different world today. You simply can't compare it. And I really think that moving forward, it's not about recession proofing. It's about brand building. I know that some of you think differently. It's about finding a specific type of buyer avatar and making them like a raving fan. And the thing is that I've seen this over and over again and done this over and over again for it to prove itself. What I have seen happen this recession
Yeah.
is higher ticket products. You guys, some of you know, Danny, you know, there's a brand that I've been working with for 2 years where Joe Rogan uses their products. LeBron James, Kian knows them as well. And I can say that they're premium products in the exercise niche where big people use their names, and their sales have been impacted a lot because they're the most expensive in their field.
Yeah.
So what I have noticed is there is a change in price, high ticket products, where suddenly products that maybe weren't price dependent, the niche is suddenly more becoming price dependent.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Can I just come back to a slight point? I agree with what you're saying, because you said about, well, you should be doing it anyway for getting raving fans about your brand. But let me give you an example. In COVID, and friend of the show, Jim, I don't have to say any more, was in travel, and it kneecapped him overnight, and it just killed his business. So it doesn't matter how many raving fans he's got. If you're in lockdown, you're at home, that's not going to sell regardless of raving fans, and not going to buy it because the necessity 100%. Is not there. So I agree with what you're saying, but there are going to be certain things where that's the point I was trying to get to on that side.
But a pandemic comes once in like 100 years, and that
so does a recession, like with limited budgets to go on holiday, right? It won't be as effective.
But a recession will last longer. A
Yes,
recession will last longer than what the pandemic did. So his travel brand, if he would have stuck around, would be more, not totally back to normal, but more or less back to normal now.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And moving forward, I think we're past the pandemic. And probably will be
I'm
for
just
a
giving
long
you
time.
examples. He's
100%.
like, say you want to trade all year round, and the fact is you're in beauty. We'll get to that bit. You want to trade all year round and it be consistent. You know, we need water, we need air, we need shelter, etc., etc. And then you spin off those kind of necessity products. Like, do you really need? And I respect to anyone in the audience that's listening, and on the podcast, is that. Does someone really need a toaster cover when they're broke? Or do they need to be fed? Do they need water? That's the point I'm getting to, is there's certain functional products that work and consumable products that work as well. But you're already in beauty. We're going to get into that because that's a very interesting one where people will not give up certain beauty products regardless. Some people go without food. It's the same with people that smoke cigarettes. They'd rather eat less because they won't go without tobacco, and that's still a thriving industry in that point. But look, let's carry on. Sorry, Sharon, I didn't want to butt in there.
Well, that's what I wanted to say, that the main impact that I've seen, and I've got my footprints in many different niches, and it allows me to see how dynamic Amazon can be. And in general, not just Amazon, I do a lot of off Amazon, so not just Amazon. The biggest impact that I've seen have been for higher ticket products. I've seen brands that made 10 plus million go down to like 90% because and that's I always talk about that products are either price dependent, design dependent, or review dependent. And I have seen now products that I would have called design dependent suddenly become price dependent. So I have seen that change where people may prefer to buy something that's a little bit cheaper right now. But I've still been seeing, look, like this camping brand, for example, the only differentiation point really is the cuteness. And, you know, people are still out there camping with their kids and making, you know, wanting to make memories. And that's what this specific brand is about.
Which is another thing that works in the recession area. Boys, we're going to get to you because we're 10 minutes in and we haven't given our airtime.
Go for it.
So, Adam, did you want to bring up that chart and then we'll move into Kian and then we'll make it a bit more fluid as we go round as well?
Yeah, sure. Are you able to bring it up?
Yeah, I'll bring it up for you now.
Okay, cool. So I think there's a couple ways to think about this topic. One is the business strategies that you deploy, kind of irregardless of product, and maybe we'll get into that in the back half of this. I think to front end it to the specific question you asked, Danny, which is around like product ideas. And I thought about this a lot the last week, and I thought about it a ton during COVID. And for me, it's a concept of like the order of effects. So to contextualize this, let's go back to COVID, right? So when COVID first hit, what's the first order effect? People are scared shitless. They need to get masks. They need to get hand sanitizer. They need to get toilet paper. Like you're acting out of fear. And when you act out of fear, it's like the lowest common denominator was those things. If you went into mass hand sanitizer, like you want to talk about a knife fight, if you got into that space, yeah, there was a massive opportunity, and it's the logical opportunity when that broke out. but it's dangerous. Like the risk reward is just the pendulum doesn't make sense. And so for me, it's looking at the second and third order effects, assuming that a recession is going to take place, which I think it's going to happen in some degree.
Yeah.
So like using the COVID example, okay, it started with mass hand sanitizer. Then it went to people working from home. They may need a microphone. They may need new desk setup. Their kids are bored, so they buy a crap load of toys. They're not traveling, so they're buying stuff for the house. And on this chart, you can see basically everything in red is basically what kicked off during COVID. And those are second and third order effects.
Yeah.
So if I'm a seller and I'm thinking about the next couple of years of new products or brands that I want to build, and I want to do it in the context of a recessionary environment, for me, there's like 3 or 4 second order effects that come into play. I think your first order effect, Danny, is like, get back to basics, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I need food, I need water, whatever else. I think that's the knife fight. Like, I think if you get into that world, that's where you've got 20,000 plus reviews. It's harder to differentiate. You need a pretty substantial budget and there's a lot of risk. So I think the second and third order effects are, we touched on beauty. Like, people are vain. Like they will shave budget. They'll, do things to like make sure that they look good. You know what I mean? So I don't think that goes away. People have kids and their kids' education and their kids' well-being. Like, that's a non-negotiable. I might've bought a crap load of toys during COVID, so they don't need any more toys. But if I want to send them to a Montessori school, or there's something that impacts their development as a child, I don't care how much that costs. And I don't care if I've lost my job. Like, that stuff doesn't go away. Pets is the same thing. If I've got a pet and they've got hip problems, I'm still buying supplements for their hips because I'm not going to negotiate on that. So for me, it's about looking at those downstream things that aren't going away and I think that's where you reduce the risk, right? It's like, okay, I'm not going where everybody else is going. I'm not in a knife fight, but I'm homing in on the human emotions of ego and Maslow's hierarchy and finding a spot there that's not going to go away. So that's how I think about this. And I think this chart's interesting, right? Like, this is still early. Yeah. And I think we'll see how this pans out over the next 12 months, but I think this is a pretty good spectrum of what you can expect. And then one more too, I totally forgot about this one, is pain.
Adam, for the people that listen to this on the podcast, you want to maybe just explain what we're looking at?
Yeah, for sure. So basically it's a really cool chart by Momentum Commerce, who basically analyzes search volume by category. This is basically October this year versus last year. Personal beauty care is up just about 17%. Health and households up 5%. Jewelry, pet supplies is up. Baby products are up. And then if you go to the other end of the spectrum, toys and games are down 16%. Video games, sports and outdoors, arts and crafts, tools, home improvement, patio, all that stuff's down. So if you want to think about what popped during COVID, because people bought a lot of that crap, they're not going to, when budgets are tight, they're not going to buy stuff that they might already have in their house, but they're going to flip towards those other things. Yeah. And I think another one too is pain, right? Like, if you got a sore back or your knees messed up or you get migraine headaches, again, I think those are those second, third order effects that aren't going away. And that's what I would recommend from a product strategy standpoint.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, a lot of that stuff is on the list, but you've got them in the format of a graph here, and we can go back into those in a little while. We'll go category by category, to have some discussions. Kian, if you finished there, Adam, we'll bring Kian in and get his thoughts on his side, and then we'll start nesting down on this. Kian.
Nice. Well, first of all, 100% agree with what Sharon was talking about in terms of like building a brand. I think that's always been like so important, and that's been the principle. But essentially, so when this topic came up and we knew we were going to discuss this, my mind went in like those different directions. So I'm going to try and keep this like macro level, and then we'll go into the niches later, right? Yeah. So this is more just like overview. So I would think about it in a way that like, okay, the principles of how we do things are more important than ever, because the margin for error is like, you can't afford failure at this stage because the disposable income of your customer is less. So something that I've done for retailers, right, is in the past is created sub brands for them. So for example, if we have our own brand, right, and then a retailer comes along and says, hey, we want like 100,000 units of this. It may be the exact same quality, but I want to create a sub brand because it's going to be at a cheaper price point. So if you have a product, which let's just say it's a medium level or a high quality level, and you're like, well, you know what, I want to have a lower cost alternative, but if I sell cheap products in this brand, I'm going to dilute my brand. So I would consider for anyone, no matter what category of product you're in, to consider, is it worth doing a sub-brand, meaning the products that you're already doing, but using lesser quality materials. So say, for example, if it's an outdoor furniture camping chair, rather than using nylon material, use polyester. Rather than using aluminium tubing, use steel. And then for that you already know how to make the product. You've already got supplier relationships. You already understand the market. You have the audience. But let's create a sub-brand at a cheaper price point, and then therefore you're helping those types of people in terms of which have a lesser disposable income without damaging your brand. And then also, you know, as I mentioned, having a community is very important, and that kind of stems from building a brand. Building a brand stems from having core values as a company. So I would definitely ask yourself, you know, what do we stand for as a brand? What are our values? Is it sustainability? Is it low prices? Whatever, is it fast delivery? What are your core values? And then hone in that to create your brand experience, and then create your community. And once you have that community, you can essentially launch those lower price point items to them, because you know where they are, where they hang out, what their avatars are, how much disposable income they have, and stuff like that. But it was interesting that we were talking about, you know, like self-care and stuff like that before as well, because I feel that, you know, people will always be involved in self-care. And, you know, when you have less disposable income, you'll still want to do those things, but maybe a cheaper alternative. So for example, ladies might go out to do their nails, to get their nails done, or do waxing or whatever. Guys might do teeth whitening, whatever it may be. But rather than go out and pay a high service fee for something like that, well, now you might purchase some at-home kits for those types of things. So I would think about, you know, what type of services do people do which are quite expensive. Now you have a less disposable income. Well, can I do this at home for cheaper? And COVID was kind of a good example of that with like home fitness, right? You're paying like $75 a month for your gym membership, but you could buy some resistance bands and kettlebells, and then now you can just work out from home. So I'm not suggesting going into that category, but what are the things that you can do cheaper at home than what was quite expensive doing outside if you're facing an incoming recession?
Yeah, a perfect example that was, and it doesn't matter recession or not, gym memberships for a lot of people can be expensive, right? That's without even commuting to the gym and add-on times and stuff. So we see a lot in COVID that people bought equipment to train at home and everything kind of sold out. And it's looking at that peripheral equipment. What can you sell? You know, the stuff that's useful at home. Now you're seeing more of these dynamic kind of body weight machines or whatever that they are. Some of it's quite gimmicky as well, right? So it's like, if people can't afford to go to the gym, what can we provide that's easy to have at home, still has margin on it, and gives them a full body workout, etc.?
Totally. Are we going to transition into categories, or?
Yeah, we can do. So do you want to roll straight into the category, or should we move it around the room?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind to kick off with a couple. I've got a few, but maybe let me start with a couple, and then we can roll it around.
Because you speak are quite speedy, right? So we've only spent a couple of minutes with you. So sure. Cover these categories, and then what we'll do, we'll go back around, move back to Adam, and then of course go back to Sharon as well.
Sure. So what I was thinking about was that, you know, what are the outcomes of this, you know, looming recession and things like that? Well, we also have like an energy crisis as well, right? You know, talking about not maybe having heating, water, electricity, and all that sort of stuff. And those are definitely rising in costs, right? And that's always been a struggle, you know, around wintertime anyway. So I'm kind of thinking around products in terms of like, well, if my heating got cut out, what do I need? And, you know, growing up in Scotland, I can tell you in the wintertime, I definitely sleep with a hot water bottle in my bed. I don't know if in the States, do they call it hot water bottles as well? Because I went into a shop, like I went to Target to ask for a hot water bottle, and she looked at me like I was mad. But like, it was, you know what I mean, right? It's those like rubber things.
I think that's what we call it too. Yeah.
Okay,
we use them in Canada. We use them in Canada as well. My mom's like, "Nah, here you go. You get like a hot, and you put it down in your feet, like the plastic thing."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe because I was in California, they don't use them there. But I was anyway. I like having it, right? It's comforting. But if you don't have heating in your home, right, you can't sleep when it's freezing. So like having items like hot water bottles and stuff like that, you know, I would look at things like that. Also, you know, like maybe, rather than buying like bottled water for $3 a bottle, you might want to buy like, you know, these big water containers or these water canisters for water storage. And you might go to those like areas where you can just fill them up. So essentially you can get water a lot cheaper. You might want to cut down your coffee expenses in terms of not spending $7 on a Starbucks. So you might buy like, you know, your coffee pods or like a French press. So I would kind of look at the things like, what do I spend quite a lot on daily tickets? What am I going to be potentially without over the winter in terms of hot water, electricity, things like that? And then what are the products around those things to sort of help ease those issues. And I do have other ones, but we should probably pass it around the room a little bit.
Adam, some categories you want to go into, explore a bit?
Yeah, I mean, maybe flip over to Sharon. I mean, I kind of talked about mine. Like, I think beauty, personal care, pain, pets, kids education, and kids necessities, like those, I kind of touched on, but I'll maybe let Sharon dive deep. I've got some more stuff on the business strategy side that maybe we can loop around to after.
All right. Yes, Sharon, do you want to return back to you? Should we talk that I'm interested as well? Not that I'm interested in, what I found fascinating, and we revert this back to people that smoke tobacco, they'll go without food, whereas some people won't go without beauty products. As a woman, what does that mean to you as you sell in beauty as well? And like you said, recession hasn't touched your business in the way that it could for other products. What is the impact there? What is it, the psychology behind it and stuff?
Look, I sell products only for women, so I can only speak about women, and I am a woman.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah, that's
thank
why
God.
I'm asking you. Yeah. This is why I'm asking you the question as the professional.
I don't know if there's a difference with men and these specific things. I don't think there is. I think that everyone's the same when it comes to this. But at the end of the day, especially women, we want to feel good about ourselves. Doesn't matter if we have money for it or not. It doesn't matter if we're going out. I was really scared when COVID hit, especially for the anti-aging products. It was the first time I've ever been through something like that. And I was scared because I said to myself, like, women aren't going to go out anymore. Our peak season is during the summer in America. So because women are out in the sun, and then, that they need anti-aging products because the sun causes wrinkles. And I was like, shit, like our sales are probably going to be really, really impacted. And that's not what happened. The biggest issue was stock, not that. And that really taught me that it doesn't really matter. Now, we are the most expensive in our niches. And I was also, when the recession hit, because I'd seen other niches where the premium products are the more expensive products. Now, by the way, I have to say this, we have a huge subscription base. So we have like thousands of people that have subscriptions on Amazon to our products. And I also thought that would be, I've never been through a recession before. I didn't know what to expect. No impact, like, whatsoever. And I think the psychology side of it is that, women, no matter what, are still going to be spending money on the brands that they trust. Look, when it comes to a beauty brand, you're putting stuff on your skin, or you're putting stuff on your face or in your mouth or whatever. There are women that would be willing to compromise and will go and buy from AliExpress or like some cheap Chinese product. But there's always, forever going to be those women that are not. They want to be able to trust the brand that they're using, etc. So I think that with beauty, recession-proof, pandemic-proof, kind of anything. Maybe not anything. Maybe not like a war-proof or something like that. But I do think that those are things that when beauty now. I did want to. Can I move from the beauty thing, or do you want to talk more?
No, it's fine. Okay. I just wanted to get that point over.
Yeah.
That some things where you might see as a luxury is actually a no-no, and it's the same thing with people, tobacco, etc. Some people would rather go out food and cut everything else and be cold than go without cigarettes. Like, it's not a necessity, but it's just they're not willing to give that up, and it still thrives. Yeah.
True. But something I do want to say, Danny, and I've said this before, if I was to, my beauty brand started in 2016, 17. And if I needed to start them again in 2022, today, I don't know if I would have been able to do it straightforward. Like, it got in at the right time. And beauty is a huge, huge, huge category. And there's so many sub niches within beauty. Okay. So beauty is many, many things. Like, even a beauty blender holder is still a beauty product, right? So beauty can be many, many things. And in saying that, it's also a very difficult niche, like a very difficult category, very, very review dependent. Not all, but many, many products are review dependent. Some could be price dependent depending on the product. So I am not saying that everyone listening to us thinking about Amazon should be getting into beauty. It depends. It really, really does depend, because we're not looking for products that will last for a year or 3 months. Okay. We want to look at something that's going to last for the long term. So just because beauty is is that type of niche, most people that I know personally that sell in beauty and do very, very well started around the time I did. I don't know if I know anyone that started in the last year in niches like mine that's kicked butt. So that's why I'm saying you also need to think about, we're talking about Amazon. We're not talking about off Amazon. There was something about the chart that Adam brought up that I do think is important to say. So it was 2001 versus 2022. Sorry, 2021, not 2001. 2021 versus 2022. So even though kids' toys, etc., is showing that it's down 15%, okay, that's because last year people were stuck at home with their kids, driving them crazy, driving them mad, spending money just to do to get their kids to be busy, right? I don't think it's okay. So we already bought them toys last year, so we don't need to do it now. It's just the demand's gone back to normal. That's what it is. I'm pretty sure if we would have had a chart 2020, 2019 compared to now, it's just gone back to normal. And I just happened to say this because I literally just looked at a Google trend today. It's to do with a toy niche. So I just think that many things, stuff has just evened out and it's just gone back to what it is. So it doesn't necessarily mean that things are on a downtrend. They're just on a downtrend because of COVID. Not
because
necessarily
of an uptrend that's unprecedented and the fluctuations had to come into balance, yeah?
Exactly. It's just like when people are saying, manufacturing's down 40%, etc., because it went up like crazy for 2 years. So things are just going also back to normal as well. I'm not saying sales haven't gone down a lot. I know that for a lot of people, sales have gone down, but I'm just saying that there's certain things that it's just that things are going, in my experience, are just going back to normal.
Cool. Right, I'm going to go through some of the other listed items here, and then you guys can interject. So we've just covered what I've been mentioning about earlier on, which is consumer staples, right? And this is based around information investors, stock market and stuff. Now, I know that doesn't directly correlate with Amazon, but these are the industries that are thriving where they get good returns that go through the recession as well. So we're talking consumer staples. An interesting one, like we mentioned, is camping gear. If people have less money, then they can't afford to go on lavish holidays. It's, a good place in the US, often the weather's quite good versus the UK in a lot of cases, but not all. I'm assuming the same for Canada, Adam, as well. So that people can do more luxurious camping without the international costs of flights that might cost you a lot more if you've got 2, 3 plus children, right? Holidays start to get very expensive. Automotive parts. Quite a boring industry for some people. So selling parts and stuff like that is probably going to be off the table for most Amazon sellers unless they've got the technical expertise. As Kian mentioned earlier on, coffee and tea. It's hard with that industry as well because of the branding and stuff. It's the peripheral items that could be sold off in and around those will make a difference. There's Tupperware. They've called it, confectionery, but candy. Like for instance here, where is it? When the economy tanks and it's really stressful, job prospects are grim, In high stress situations, find himself reaching for the candy bowl filled with a brim with sugary sweets and cheap chocolate. So Cadbury's profits went up by 30% in the recession that we had in 2008, and chocolate sales grew by 12% in 2020 in COVID. Like a lot of people were not exercising and stuff. So even things like that, if you look at it from a sub side of things, yes, we need food, but do we need to fill people up with lots of chocolate and sweets? Is it, it depends on where you sit with that kind of stuff. But obviously in highly stressful situations, people tend to go food, confectionery, they still work as gifts. So there's other ideas as well. Cosmetics we've just covered. Pet care products next to children, there's unconditional love. Kids get unconditional love. Children get unconditional love, right? So you're going to end up spending in and around that area. Again, it can be very competitive. Not that it's really interested for us because for brands and stuff, but movies, TVs and video games. Clothing's another one, but when it comes down to size variations, etc., it starts to get messy and expensive and returns and stuff. Then you've got baby products, food and drink, kitchenware, which obviously that's still very broad because people are not eating out. They might have certain things that they want for at home is where they don't have money to say spend in restaurants and stuff. They still might invest in certain things that eating at home is much more pleasurable. Now, if we looked at COVID, there was a lot of people doing conversions in that period, because not necessarily people had less money. They just didn't have any means to spend the money because they're limited on how much they left the house. So you had all these people turning, making beer gardens and everything in their properties because they didn't know how long COVID's going on for. So a lot of sales went up for garden furniture there, outhouses and stuff like that, and recondition of games rooms and stuff like that. So some people are going to invest in certain areas there as well. Sports and fitness, home renovation and repair supplies. So they're the same, like the key things that I thought, oh, who was the report by? I might as well cite it. Where did I get this from? It's a blog post from Fairchild.com. I had it in the show notes, and I was taking stuff from Investopedia as well, some articles and some data off of there. So I've just rampaged through a load of items there. Is there anything that anyone picked up on there?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add, Danny, is that so like when you mentioned that, obviously when you go through a recession, your disposable income is less, especially if you have kids in your family. Let's say you're 4 people, like holiday is probably the first thing to go, right? So what are the activities that people would do when you're not going on holiday? And you mentioned like camping and stuff like that, right? Camping is very broad in general category. So I would kind of look at those sort of things and be like, where can I go niche? And like, you could take an activity, something like fishing, for example, and like the more niche you go, the more responsive your audience is, the more like you build that avatar. So, and I would also consider it and think about it in a way of like, well, not just like what are the categories that I can get into because we're going to a recession, but for the brand that I currently have and for the people that I have within my audience, what products can I pivot into that still make sense for the brand? Because, like listening to this episode, someone might say, okay, cool, well, there's a great opportunity in beauty, but if you have an outdoor brand, like now you have to launch a new brand and you're competing with the people which have got brands and built up those reviews and all that sort of stuff already. So I would more look at like what's a low hanging fruit in terms of like what are the type of products that my audience would like. Do I have them on an email list? Do I have them in a Facebook group and stuff like that? And then what can I pivot into that still makes sense for the brand that they would like? So I would sort of think about that first, but not just, hey, let's sell this product because it's going to be, popular in a recession, but how niche can I go? And the way I always think about when I'm developing product is like, what problem am I solving for my customer? Like for this product, what is the biggest pain point with it and how do I solve it? And if I can't solve a problem, then I'm not going to launch it because then you're just like everyone else. So I would like look at the categories that we've kind of mentioned before. What makes sense for the brands that you already have? How niche can you go? And then what problem can you solve for those people? And then that's when I think you'll find a winning product.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, so I think for me, if you're cool with shifting gears, I think like there's a concept of, okay, how do I get opportunistic at the product or brand level, given the dynamics that are likely going to take place over the next couple of years? I would say that the vast majority of sellers, if you're to go identify a product, develop it, whatever, you could be 6 months out and then maybe it's a 2-year cycle and then you've missed it. And I think a lot of people got burned chasing COVID products for that same reason.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about it much more in terms of what is the reality that's going to impact my current businesses and brands, and what can I do to overcome that? And I think there's 2 things that are likely going to happen, and we've already seen this. One is demand changes. So your TAM or your total addressable market, say you're only selling in the US, I think for most sellers, you can expect it to be down 20%. So there's just 20% less people typing in search terms looking for your product. On the flip side of that, I think you've also got margin compression, right? You've got, price matters much more. Competitors get a little bit nervous, so they reduce their price. Amazon's ad marketplaces obviously changed the dynamics, so that's shaved margin down quite a bit. So I think you probably have like a 20% downshift in demand or TAM, and you probably have a 20%, 30% downshift in margins for those reasons we talked about. So your business is probably going to be down 35%, even if you execute on it exactly as you have successfully the last couple of years. So for me, the question for most people is, what do you do about that? And I think there's a handful of things. Maybe we'll start with the demand and CPA. So I think an easy thing that we've seen is okay, market's down 20% in the US and margins are harder because ads are different. Like international expansion is something that everybody's going to have to do. Like you can pick up a lot of that demand, if you expand into Canada, UK, Germany, like those three, you should be able to cover that TAM right off the bat. And so I think we've seen that substantially. Like I've got a brand that will do half of the revenue in Canada, but it's almost the same profit as the US. And so that's a much easier playbook with the existing SKU count that you can kind of tap into. Variation launches or those supplementary products that even if your core product's down 20%, you can pick up those little incremental gains with those products. And I think a big one, frankly, related to like traffic costs is like you can't just rely on pay-per-click and like the typical keyword game on Amazon anymore. I think that you've got to identify those arbitrage traffic opportunities and audiences where the cost per acquisition is substantially less and other Amazon sellers aren't pursuing it. And then the final thing for me, and Kian can probably dial in on this substantially too, is like the Chinese manufacturers are hurting. Like their economy is in pain. The RMB to US dollar conversion's rough. They're scared about demand. They've seen a substantial reduction in the orders that they see with the boomerang effect of supply chain issues. Now is the time to negotiate. Like we talk about margins going down because ad costs and all that stuff and more competitive pricing on the platform, which is probably going to persist. You can get 15, 20% reduction in your COGS right now if you're sharp and you have conversations with factories. Maybe a year ago, you couldn't get 60-day payment terms. That's a conversation that's a lot easier to have now, especially if you're bringing volume for an existing manufacturer. So for me, it's like sharpening the pencil on those core things that matter, expanding internationally, expanding your existing catalog, and really getting dialed with operations, traffic, COGS, and payment terms so your cash flow cycles. Take advantage of like those things are, for me, a lot easier for most sellers to address than to try to figure out a new brand and a new category to get into, which is a little bit more speculative.
Yeah. Kian?
Yeah, 100% agree with everything Adam was mentioning. And I think it is a massive opportunity, with your suppliers at the moment. And something I always like to do around this time of year anyway, like as we get closer to Chinese New Year, is plan my orders for next year in terms of a forecast. Now, that's a little bit more challenging now because if the disposable income of your consumer is less, then you would kind of plan for a lesser quantity. But how can we benefit from our economies of scale, knowing what sort of quantity that we order over the course of the year? So, for example, we talked about that outdoor furniture camping chair, right? That's probably going to be a decent product all year round anyway. So I would kind of go to my supplier to say, look, for every purchase order that I place, we order every quarter, we order 3,000 units per order. So over the course of the year, we order 12,000 units. Now, when you get back after Chinese New Year, I want you to hold 12,000 units worth of that polyester material that I need for this furniture chair in stock in your warehouse. And then also look with the steel tubing and all that sort of stuff as well. And then what you're getting is now you're getting that economies of scale of you're buying 12,000 units rather than 3,000 units, but you're not actually paying for the stock. Like you pay for it as and when it ships. So you might pay like a 30% deposit that might be reduced to a 10% deposit, but you pay for the goods as they leave the door. But the benefit as well is that your raw materials are now in stock, so your lead times are reduced as well. Plus, they were all manufactured in one batch, so you have a consistency of supply. And then the other thing is as well, you're only paying for it as and when you ship it out. And in worst case scenario, you don't take the stock because let's say your order volume goes down, your supplier's still okay with holding it in stock for you, because if it's like that steel tubing, well, they can sell it to another customer for another chair. If it's a black polyester material, they can use that on another product. So it's not like if you don't take the order that they're totally screwed, but you're getting faster lead times, you're getting cheaper prices, you're getting a consistency of supply. And then as Adam said, if you can negotiate credit on your order as well, there's a lot of things to kind of hone into. And I wouldn't look at it as like, hey, let me get 10% off my cost of goods. I would kind of think of it as like, where are the 3 or 4 areas where I can save maybe 2 or 3%? But if you can save 3% in 4 areas, well, that adds up to 12%, right? And that could be things like, am I really optimizing my carton dimensions? Can I get more units in a container by changing the carton dimensions? Where are my goods stored in the 3PL? Like, what is the pallet loading height? Is it 1.6 meters? Is it 1.9? Well, if it's 1.9 and my cartons have been 40 centimeters in height, if I changed it to 35 centimeters in height, well, then I can get one more layer, and I'll get one more layer of additional products for free storage per pallet. So those are the types of things that I would hone in on to be like, where can I save 1 or 2 or 3% across multiple areas in my supply chain to then save me Because ultimately, if we're talking about recession-proof products, price is a very, very important factor. And if you can get your goods at a slightly lower price than your competition, then great, you have a higher chance to succeed going into next year.
Yep. Sharon, we'll go around the room and do final words. Are we wrapped here? Do you think we've kind of crystallized stuff?
I've got quite a few stuff to say. I kept
All
my
right,
mouth.
then,
I'm very proud of myself. I was quiet.
Were you making more notes?
No, I was remembering stuff in my head. I didn't write it down this time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I know that Kian has a sourcing, company. But I'm gonna have to say about something that I feel is happening the opposite for what Kian and Adam are saying. I'm sourcing products every day in China, and I have not been seeing China's economy is such a bad place right now. The Chinese people are suffering. There's so much more going on than what a lot of people are aware. There's still lockdowns. There's still there's a lot of shit going on right now in China behind the scenes. And unless you have a really, really good relationship with someone in China, you probably may not even be aware of all of it. And I think that both Kian and Adam also have very good relationships there. I definitely do. I have not been trying to haggle my way down with my suppliers. I've been extremely compassionate with my suppliers right now and empathetic towards them right now. I'm not necessarily trying to bring costs that far down. And I consider myself a pretty freaking kick-ass negotiator. And I've seen a lot of resistance in certain areas of products where I've, Adam, you didn't see, I sent you a product that I've been working on in the last year in Instagram recently. And like with that specific product, it hasn't come to launch yet because I haven't been able to get the price to where I need the price to be. And I'm really, really good at finding many different manufacturers and finding a manufacturer to do one component here and another component there. And I have been seeing quite a bit of resistance there. So I don't know if everyone's listening to this is going to now try and negotiate, is going to get to those prices, like bring down their costs by 20%. I also think that right now is not the time to make a forecast of a huge orders. And then, suppliers be stuck with raw materials. I think that'll just ruin your relationship right now with a supplier. So I did interview my Chinese on seller sessions a couple of weeks. So I interviewed the owner of the inspection company that I've been working with for a while. If anyone on the podcast missed that, I encourage you to go back and listen to it on the podcast, just about an update of what life in China right now looks like and with manufacturers, etc. So that side of it, I would say, I know we're all running businesses, but hopefully relationships are important to us in business. We also need to think about that. I haven't seen suppliers be now, because there's less manufacturing, we'll allow, instead of, $2.50, it'll cost $1.50. Haven't seen that happen. Negotiated, tried to do certain things. Haven't seen that happen. So that's that. You earlier talked, Danny, this is another note. I said, you spoke, for example, about a few different things. And then you said gaming. You said something about gaming.
Gaming?
I don't know if you remember. You read out a list of things, and one of them was gaming.
I said about a games room. So people were converting in COVID, yeah.
So even though we're in the middle of a recession, like Twitch and subscriptions on Twitch, etc., are still huge. People are still gaming. The gaming niche is something that I think, going back to the original subject of the thing, products, gamers are still spending money on anything to do with gaming, whether there is a recession or there isn't. Even more people that are losing their jobs are even more into gaming, etc. There are so many niches within the gaming niche, right? At the seller session at Branded by Women last year, I spoke about gaming and putting it together with a kawaii niche and all sorts of things. That stuff isn't going anywhere, whether there is a recession or there isn't, because there are people in this world that, whether they have money or not, just like you spoke about beauty and smoking, etc. There are people that have weird fetishes and weird things, okay, like the kawaii niche and cosplay and all that stuff, that whether they have money or they don't, they still pay for they still do those things. Yeah. So even though you spoke about gaming,
I wonder where you was going to go there, though, Sharon. When you talk about weird fetishes,
Yeah,
This is the family show. Yeah.
So, for example, I am in many different, for the sake of product research, product research is my thing. And I'm in hundreds of different Facebook groups, and like probably 10 of them are gamer girls Facebook groups. I'm not a gamer girl. It's for the sake of product research. And that's where I'm talking about the fetishes, like the things these girls wear and stuff is just like crazy. And a lot of that stuff they buy on Amazon. I see it. It's in there, and they're still doing it. So it's not just what can I survive with? It's also mental illness right now is extremely high. There's a lot of people that are alone today with themselves in their room, gaming, all sorts of things, and they're spending money. So there's that. And then there was something that Adam said, and I didn't write it down, and I forgot. There was one more thing I wanted to say that. Oh, okay, I remember. So Adam was saying that beyond just new products, when you have your own brand, you're already selling a brand, you also need to look, Amazon.com is not the only place to sell, right? So he said expanding into Canada and Europe, etc., which I'm so happy that he mentioned. The exercise brand that I've been working with for the last 2 years, and I told you guys they're the most expensive in their niche and their sales have gone down quite a bit. They manufacture their products in Australia and they live in Australia and they sell mostly in America. And, we need cash flow. There's hundreds and thousands of dollars in products on the scene, and we need cash flow there. And I said to them, you live in the Gold Coast, go physically to gyms and start pitching. And just last week, the owner of that brand sold 50 or 60 of a specific product just by going into the gyms. So I think that I've never considered myself an Amazon seller. I've considered myself a brand builder. And I think many people that listen to this are Amazon sellers, but Amazon's not the only place. I only started selling on Amazon in 2016. I've been selling online my entire adult life. There's other ways as well to expand your brand. The people that are suffering right now, like Adam said, get into Canada if you don't sell in Canada. Get into Europe if you don't sell in Europe. Get into Walmart. Get into Etsy if you can. Start selling, work more with influencers. Start doing things that maybe you didn't have to do until now, but now you do.
Yeah, and TikTok's coming soon as well. I've been having meetings with the heads down there. I'm going to go and see them in 2 weeks' time again. But there's going to be a big discussion in and around that. I can't say too much now, but TikTok are going to try and have a real good go at it. And so, I've gone in now. We've had a chat. Going to bring in some of the faces for the industry. Give them a list of names to sit down and speak to, because that will be an opportunity if they can really compete. Now, they've now got in the UK 300 strong commerce team that they've employed to put behind TikTok shops. So I'll talk more about that later. I can't say too much now, but there's stuff coming around that, and there's going to be other industry people that, big sellers and stuff that I'm bringing in to TikTok, and so they can sit down, the engineering team, the head of commerce and stuff, to see if we can really take it to Amazon, even if it's 15-20%. Do you see what I mean? Rather than 4 and 6%. Yeah.
I think right now, and until that happens, I think right now, like influencer marketing is really the way to go. I think that if your product isn't a social media worthy product, that kind of sucks for you. But I think that in the future, like not just in the future, already now, influencer marketing, working with influencers is a great way to grow your sales right now, and also the great way to find new products, by the way. But yeah, just talking about marketing, I think that up to now, if there are people listening to the podcast who have seen a decrease in sales and up to now could allow themselves to be an Amazon only brand, get your freaking ass out there, get into fairs, go do what you need to do. Like we're entrepreneurs, we're business people. When I was 15, I was on Saturdays, I had my own little booth at a fair selling sunglasses. Do what it is that you need to do. Get your products into as many places as possible. Maybe up to now, you could get away with just Amazon, but also now with recessions, like also make sure that you're getting out there.
Yep. Adam, Kian, any final words?
Yeah, I think for me, like you kind of touched on the mental game a little bit, Sharon. I think it's like the biggest thing I try to think about, and have thought a lot about it here the last month, kind of coming into what the future looks like the next little bit, is like when you act out of fear and lack, it's just, you never make good decisions. And I think fear and lack and stress comes from the things that we can't control. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with our brands. We don't know what's going to happen with the economy and Amazon search and whatever else. So I think in moments like that, I always revert back to what are the things that I can control and what are the things that I can influence, and like bite down on the mouth guard, get mentally tough, and tap into that entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's the theme. If you find yourself getting scared and nervous, whenever else, like, don't make decisions in that place. Step away from it. Think about the things I can control and divert your energy that way. And stuff has a way of figuring itself out. So.
Excellent. Kian?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Danny, you're talking about the TikTokers, and Sharon was talking about like how to get more sales and things like that. What I was going to finish with was something similar in terms of like, where can you find those sales which essentially went missing, right? And I think a really low hanging fruit is content creators, and a lot of people are kind of moving towards TikTok, but I was more referring to like YouTubers. So whatever your product is, search for the people which have the biggest YouTube audience for that product, because I think YouTube is massively underestimated in terms of like the products that you can actually sell there. A couple of quick examples, like everyone knows, like Mr. Beast, who's got probably the biggest YouTube channel in the world, launched a chocolate bar. It's the number one selling chocolate bar in America. Logan Paul launches Prime energy drink. That's the number one energy drink. So you don't have to go after those big guys, obviously, but there are YouTubers which talk about the category of product that you sell, which are maybe not familiar with doing brand deals. So you can sort of, figure out some terms that should be beneficial for both of you. And it's like, get your products in front of those people, get them to do reviews, get them to do videos, get them. And what I always like to do with influencers is get them involved in the product development process. So rather than just like, hey, this is my product, can you post it? This is how much I'll pay you. That's very transactional. Yeah. I like to be like, I would find the top travel influencer to say, hey, I'm developing this travel bag. This is where I've got it so far, and I would love your feedback on it. Are there any improvements you would suggest? And by the way, if you like it, why don't we do a sort of collaboration agreement? So they say, yeah, by the way, this is awesome bag, but the pockets aren't big enough for my drones or whatever. Cool, we make that adjustment. And then now when the product comes out, influencer is like, hey, I worked on the development of this bag. I made sure that the pockets have large enough size for your drones. So definitely check this out. They're way more enthusiastic if they've been involved in the process. So I would say really lean into the content creators to really get those sales back and also improve your products as well.
Yes, cool. Sharon, how does everyone reach you? Silly question as a co-host on the show, but I'm going to go around and ask Adam and Kian as well.
You can just find me everywhere there is to be Sharon Even.
Okay, cool.
And also Adam? Here, obviously, Sell Sessions.
Yeah, Adam?
Yeah, just type Adam Hiest into YouTube and you'll find me there. I drop videos every Monday. So
excellent. And Kian?
Yeah, so Sourcing with Kian on YouTube and Facebook. I actually just dropped a YouTube episode right before this one, all about patents. So a boring subject, but it's really important. So and then Instagram Kian_JG if you're social there. But yeah, look forward to connecting with you guys.
Cool. Great. Thanks for joining us, guys. Guys, thank you for joining us. Sharon will be back here on Thursday. Sharon, you around Thursday? Yeah,
I'm
Sharon
around
will be
Thursday.
Back here. Sharon's going to be back here Thursday. I'll see you again either Friday or next week. I've got a seller that we had a long discussion on how to not lose $1 million on Amazon. And that's a very interesting discussion. So that will be coming either Friday or it's going to be Monday next week. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.